Namaskar and welcome to Frontless Media. Today we have two celebratory authors, Mr. Praful Goradia and Mr. C. Shibu. And the topic for today would be role of books in creating a knowledge society. I am Pranav Gupta, co-founder and director of Frontless Media. Allow me to introduce what Frontless is. Frontless is India's leading and one of the very few information online portals for Indian publishing and the affiliated industries. The encyclopedia, the guide, the profile, and the library. We believe in the power of the ecosystem. If you are a creator, publisher, seller, provider, or a reader of the published world, this is the must destination for you to know the world around you with an Indian perspective. It brings the newsworthy from the world of publishing, from books and journals, from fiction to non-fiction, from print to digital, and everything around it. Covering an array of topics from book business to book passion to industry statistics, we shed light from the already hyped to behind the scenes. In the ever-evolving world of chatter, opinions, and conversation, we let you visit all the facades of all the facts. The Spotlight is a talk show on Frontlist, featuring the industry leaders and the decision makers. It will give you a platform to put your opinions across hundreds of thousands of people. It's a pleasure and privilege to have both of you, sir, today in the last episode of Spotlight for the calendar year 2021. The topic, as I mentioned,
so much.
Role of books in creating a knowledge society. Allow me to introduce both the panelists today. Mr. Praful Goradia, who have been born in Bombay on 27th March 1937, is a specialist of the tea industry, having worked with biggest tea brokers in the world and later in his own business. He later made the conscious and resolute decision to quit a comfortable existence to enter the uncertain world of politics, his real passion and constant calling since his adolescence. Elected to parliament in 1998 as a member of the Bharatiya Janata Party, he intervened in several important matters that came up for decision, making several significant speeches on contemporary issues. Professor Praful Goradia has penned several books: Profiles of Tea, Dear Editor, The Saffron Book, Hindu Masjid, Muslim League's Unfinished Agenda, Anti-Hindus, and a Saga of Indian Tea, and many more. He has also written over 500 articles on the issues of both national and global significance. His letters to editors of national dairies, numbering over 2,800, are useful for transporting contemporary readers over a period of modern India's political journey. He presides over the Indian School in Delhi, which has earned a reputation for offering modern education entwined with the traditional Indian ethos. I welcome you, sir, on the Spotlight session of the Frontless.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Allow me to introduce Mr. C. Shibu, who was born in Kochi and now lives in Bangalore with his wife and daughter. He graduated from the prestigious National Defense Academy in 1981. He has served in the Indian Navy and commanded 2 warships. Post his retirement, he has executed hydroelectric projects in the Kaveri River Basin in Karnataka, Beas River Basin in Himachal, and Teesta River Basin in Sikkim. He holds a postgraduate degree in Defense Studies from Chennai University and MA in English Literature from Pune University. Men and Dreams in the Dauladar is his debut novel. Shibu has changed tack from the snow-clad mountains to the blue ocean and has been associated with setting up of shipping company in India. Faith and the Beloved is his second book. Many of the characters in the novel are inspired from those who has encountered during his extensive travel. Mr. Shibu, I welcome you to the Spotlight session of Frontless Media.
Thank you so much.
So we'll start with this Q&A on our topic, the role of books in creating a knowledge society. My first question to Mr. Goradia, sir, would be, how can an author bring a change to create a knowledgeable society?
Well, it really depends on whether the author banks on information as a result of research or wherever he finds the information, then I don't know how much knowledge he is going to spread. But if he brings a new angle or a new thoughts on subjects of normal interest to society, then perhaps he would contribute to making a knowledgeable society. I'll give you my example. I had only 8 years of formal studies, 4 years in school and 4 years in college. And this is my 65th year at work. So, but I have insisted on taking a new angle on a subject, otherwise not writing on it. So my entire effort has been based on a new angle, a new way of, something fresh, and not based on knowledge and opening up bigger books to write a smaller book. And very interesting, once when in the Rajya Sabha, Mr. Shori, Arun Shori and I happened to reach early, half an hour earlier than the session began. And we started chatting. And one of the things that Mr. Shori said in the course of our conversation was, Praful, if you want to be original, don't read. And that was music to my ears because I don't like reading. I fall asleep in 10 minutes. Whereas if you ask me to write, I can write for 2 hours, 3 hours at a time. And in the process, you see, basically it boils down to this. Is it important to get the answer, or is it, because how many answers will you get from reading more and more books? It's much better if you only bank on questions, because the moment you ask the right question, you're bound to find the answers. That is not difficult. And maybe through media, maybe through books, maybe through conversations with friends and other people. So the question is, books by themselves don't bring and make a knowledgeable society. It's the writers knowing what question to ask. And important to know that he doesn't know much. There is another thing with reading. You feel you know almost everything. Whereas if you haven't read and you are conscious that you are largely ignorant and know much less than you should know, that is an open mind, a free mind. And I think that approach would probably bring more knowledge to society than the other way around. I don't think I have very much more to say on this subject because of my limitations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Shibu, your thoughts on this?
Of course, I agree with the honorable the other panelists. Yes, in some parts, definitely, yes, I agree with them. But equally, I would say that, eyes do not see what the mind does not know. So finally, whatever be the source of information, books are only an expression of what people think. By itself, it does not stand alone. So historically, be it, let's say, if you start with Gautam Buddha, was one of the possibly the most famous philosophers of India in the beginning stages, who made a change which is still carrying forward. The next great philosopher who made a change was maybe Sri Shankaracharya, who came up with this concept of Advaita and so many things that he said which is to be looked at. Then came, let's say, Swami Vivekananda, who came out with this concept of, let's say again, a take on life and take on approach. So if you take this with specific to Indian context, or let's say if you take about a philosopher like Karl Marx, who came up with the new concept of communism, which changed the world upside down. So books have had their impact in various times of history and various times. more than like the previous panelist said, it is not so much about the books people read. It's about what is the thought process of the person who's writing and how it relates to the society at that point in time, and when it is due for a change or whether it gels with the people who are at that point in time. So many of the times in books in many ways addresses social issues which exist at that point in time. So many have been, say, enablers for change, no doubt. Now, if I go one step further and say that I go to the stage before the written word was written, let's say we have a phenomenal tradition of oral tradition. See, if you see the written word, Sanskrit as we know it, will not go back maybe beyond 4000 BC, 6000 BC. All the liturgical texts of Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, it's all in Sanskrit. But if you take, the Mahabharata, which is supposed to be the largest epic known in the world, 1 lakh verses plus, it is supposed to have started with an oral tradition. So even before writing came, people could think through the whole thing and, pass the whole thing through people to people in an oral tradition wherein I'm looking at the phenomenal mental capacity of our, the sages and rishis of yesteryears who could think of, the Bhagavad Gita or the Mahabharata or the Upanishads, all of which, as we know today, predate any form of written records, be it any kind of written language. It's older than the way of written language as we know it, be it Pali or be it Sanskrit or even something older than that. So that we have where such phenomenal mental power where they could think of a whole lot of things in their mind and pass it on generation to generation purely by an oral tradition. So, expression, be it oral today when it was at some point in time, then it became the written book, then came the today's media wherein the written book, you have the movies, you have the gaming industry, you have the digital media, so many ways of expression. But finally, it is always the mind which is getting expressed. So as the previous said, Socrates was famous for asking questions. So was Shankaracharya. So were the many philosophers who ask the right questions, who make people think, and they want to change. So also was, if you take, the Mahatma Gandhi, who came, let's say that, in his own, who understood things and things which questioned what was the system in place at that point in time. So I would say, let's say, books may be a form of expression, but finally it's the authors or the thinkers or the philosophers who have influenced the society from time to time and in the ability to communicate to the society at large. At some point, it was purely oral, and it became written. Now the written has got many forms of expression. It can be in the form of a book, printed book, a digital book, an audio book. It could be in the form of a movie. It could be a presentation. So the formats may vary, but finally it does require someone to think, understand the people, and they have always made a difference at all times in history, and they will continue to do so. And that's, I believe, and therefore it is important. I keep saying this. I completely agree with my panelist when he says that if you are aware that you're ignorant, you'll be more cautious. I 100% agree with that statement. There is, it's something like saying that, if you're walking in a room, dark room, you'll walk very cautiously because you cannot see. So if you extend that logic to your mind, that you're walking and you accept your ignorance, possibly, yes, you'll be more cautious, more alert, more aware, and, be a far better developed mind than if ever you get carried away with the impression that, you read a little, so you think you know a little. I think I agree with him completely that it is very important for people to know that the more you read, the less you know. And be respectful towards that, portion of knowledge, and that not drop. So, and I believe that, the authors in many formats, be it an economist, be it philosophers, be it, social writers, it's always their influence which have influenced society, and I believe it will continue to do so. The medium by which they reach may change, oral to written to digital to maybe audio, whatever be. But finally, yes, it's always the thinkers who write and therefore will influence.
So beautifully answered by both of you. The essence of the content, the essence of the thought is the necessity and which needs to be, widely circulated. I'll go on to my next question, and it's from Mr. Praful, that human minds cannot grow wise and creative unless they are exposed to literature. Sir, do you agree? If yes, share your thoughts.
Well, I cannot but agree, because otherwise, why do you have so many universities all over the world? Why do you have so many books and so many libraries, etc., etc.? So I cannot factually stand against Mr. Shibu's contention that after all, you have to read books in order to know. For example, how do you know about Shankaracharya unless you happen to read about him? But then again, back to square one, Shankaracharya was a thinker primarily. How much could he have read by the age of 32 or 33? And that also inclusive of 2 travels across India within this period. So again, he was primarily a thinker and not an academician or a journalist or any other kind of writer. So, as I said, one can't disagree. On the other hand, I think and this is where we in India, modern India, have been let down, that there have been very few thinkers. Although I don't disagree with a lot of his views, or most of them, but Gandhi was a thinker. You can't deny that. This whole idea that you can fight an enemy through satyagraha is an absolutely original idea. So, but there are not many Gandhis that we can think of. They were right through the 19th, the 20th, and so far the 21st century. That's all for the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Shibu, your thoughts on this?
So actually, now there is a little bit of understanding on what is the gamut of literature when you say, because with the education, so there comes in a question of what is education as we understand, and let's say the traditional meaning of education is to make you a modern liberal. Modern liberal in the sense that means you should be able to educated enough to take the responsibility to do your fundamental duties and rights. That's one part. To be a responsible citizen of the society. So in the traditional Indian education system, it was always art, culture, history, and philosophy, which all went into it. Now it is the 20th century that it's a Western system of education which is kind of focused on academic education and maybe driven by industrial revolution, and which at some point in time has translated to being seen as a qualification for let's say getting a job. So in some ways, I agree with Mr. Praful when he says that that academicians and academic kind of studies will take you in a direction that means okay, you will in some direction to a point in understanding a subject, maybe a domain, maybe a machinery, maybe a certain technical details. That's one part of it. So what we generally refer to as the academic intelligence or the IQ. But equally important is let's say we talk about the emotional intelligence or the social interaction capability of the individual on how to make a difference, which in Indian system in SAS used to be taught to the students through the Panchatantra stories, and where on how people behave in the system and where to draw a line, how one should behave, and where you should derive the value system from, etc. So literature goes beyond the traditional academic subjects as we know, well beyond. Academic subjects are very limited. It could be a champion in physics and still be a moron in real life. You will not be able to get through with let's say what we call a bookworm approach. So yes, I agree with Mr. Praful. Yes, what India does lack is thinkers and philosophers who make a difference, who can think originally. And we haven't had many. That's what I said. If you think of them seriously, there is one Gautam Buddha, one Sri Shankaracharya, one Vivekananda, one Gandhiji. You spread over 2,500 years, you got four or five names who have, we as outstanding thinkers who could make a difference. I suppose that is 100% correct. Academicians will not make much of a difference in this particular aspect that we are discussing. The people who make difference are the philosophers and original thinkers of any idea. Any idea. That is, its original thought is possibly the rarest commodity in India, which we always get by. And one of the unfortunate limitations that we have is that since majority of our education has become, let's say, English-centric, that means, and even if you do not decide to, the majority of the books are written from the Western side, and therefore your thought process is also influenced by the Western thought process, and which is very sublimely and very intelligently manipulated to benefit the Western, not us. So our own plus points, when you read, if you go back to SIS, where we had Sanskrit, which was developed to such a level, it could handle any aspect of, let's say, any subject, be it literature, be it art, be it science, it could anything. But at some point, we lost it. So now that limitation, I accept that we do have a limitation. We have not been successful in creating an ecosystem of, let's say, which is Indian enough, and create that thought process wherein you feel that Indian thinkers and Indian authors, beyond being whatever they're contributing, could be far more original in their thing, as we see it, and as any society has a literature which is a reflection of the society at various points. So as they say that the past of a nation is a pedestal on which the people today stand, and it should be strong enough for you to climb on it, and the pedestal, or one major part of the pedestal, which defines to you what our society has been at various points in time, which our people should understand and then develop from there progressively and to the best of our efforts at any stage.
Fine, Mr. Shibu. I'll take on to the next question and I'll throw it first on you. How much does an author's writing impact the development of a nation and its creative mind?
Okay. So definitely the answer is yes, substantially, first part. But that is one way of saying it goes far beyond that. So one of the reasons why I quoted all these people is in Indian history, when you look at the Indian context. So we have had, let's see, even today, if you talk to the Western philosophers, they kind of woke up late to the fact that the Indian Upanishads is possibly the ultimate in any kind of philosophy anywhere in the world. And they, of course, they will not acknowledge this openly, but then they come up with, any kind of thought process, and they'll say, okay, the Indian philosophers and Indian thinkers had thought about it maybe 5,000, 6,000 years back. Or let's say the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, healthcare system which somebody thought about so systematically thousands and thousands of years back today, what they're making, or so much. Or for that matter, about our understanding of the mind as we talk about. Let's say the Indian system of understanding of the mind, which takes it to, the 4 layers, and, from which comes the 4th part. And we talk about a stream of consciousness, etc. So definitely, that means it is always like the original thinkers and people who have been able to think through, and philosophers and thinkers who have been able to think through and make a difference, which has made, be it you talk about Arthashastra by Chanakya, which has been a basis for setting up and running of a full empire, to the original thinkers. Unfortunately, of course, when you refer to the Gautam Buddha as a philosopher or a thinker, it has limitations. And so also when you talk about, Shankaracharya, Vivekananda, but Gandhiji, yes, he comes into the pure social domain of fighting a system and moving forward. So I believe it's always for we as Indians and authors from India with an Indian perspective, that you should be able to communicate to our people on our strengths and and build on it. And people should feel good about being an Indian, being our Indian heritage of every kind, and make the best of it. Whatever is good, retain it and move forward. So it does take, I believe it's always for the thinkers and the writers. Now, they could be, now today, when you talk about thinkers and writers, it also includes the, let's say, anchors and TV channels. In many ways, the far more influential or writers of our. So you have, let's say, the social media influencers called bloggers or social media influencers. You have the TV channel anchors and the TV channels who lead the show, the newspaper editors, the writers in general. So the thinking fraternity of the country is, as they say, it is, it's like the perception. It is not really enough that justice is done. It should be felt that justice is done. It is not really enough that we are good. We should feel that we are good. So it's always this feeling and the perception that where the thinkers and the writers come in. And I believe they do make a phenomenal difference. They always do.
Let me have an answer from Mr. Praful.
This is a very difficult subject for me. We have heard enough of Mr. Shivu on the subject.
But I would
Nothing
still
to add
request
to this.
yeah, you have been a very avid writer, sir. You have written on so many important subjects. Just a small note on that, and we'll take it to the next one.
No, sir, there is nothing really on this subject that I can say. So if you will forgive me, I'll just thank you and congratulate Mr. Shibu for all the information he's given us.
Fine. Thank you, sir. Mr.
Thank you
Praful, my
very
next
much.
question comes to you. How can we find a common place to create a knowledge society, regardless of having diverse backgrounds in India?
No, but we already have. I mean, for example, the amount of English that is being now spoken, and the Hindi that has been picked up, the Hindustani that has been picked up even by people from Tamil Nadu and Kerala is quite phenomenal. Now, whoever was responsible, it probably films rather than books, but it has happened, and it's a great thing that has happened. To that extent, I think we have become a much more integrated country than we were at independence. In fact, there were a lot of fears that we might fall apart on the way. Mr. Churchill, of course, had wished us badly, but even otherwise, even patriotic people also had fears that we might fall apart. So I think we are on the right path. And for me to add much more to this may result in boring you people and anybody else listening. So may I say thank you once again and wish the country and its citizens all the best.
Mr. Shibu, your response to this question?
Yes, it's a very vast spectrum to speak on, but let me put it this way, since Mr. Praful mentioned about our challenges during the time of independence, he would have known it much better in person because he was there. And we are from the, let's say, the generation after the independence, we are not really seeing that struggle. But I do know, let's say, we are quite sensitive to the challenges. Because the first time you parted this was, there was a phenomenal amount of the discussion that came up and the linguistic division of the country took place. So when you talk to the old timers, that's, the people who are all working together with our freedom struggles and, in putting up a new nation. One of the fears that they had at the time of independence was that whilst we all were all for, the nationalism, we also said that we need to have English as a link language at that point in time. It was hotly debated, contested, and a very, very, very close fight in the parliament before it was decided that we ended for, let's say, the Hindi as a national language. And then we had set up, Prachar Sabhas, Hindi Prachar Sabhas in South India. I happened to have attended one of them. as you know, because my father said, why? Because Gandhiji said so. It's just as simple as that. You should learn Hindi, make an effort. So that's the kind of influence that man had. I'm telling that, he passed away in 48. I'm talking about 30 years down the line, in your 25 years down the line. People still believe that, he said so, he had a vision, so you must go with the vision. So Prajar Sabhas, yes, they had a role at some point. Then, of course, we had our falling apart at some point wherein the states felt that, Hindi was being thrust on them. And I must thank that IT revolution, which has actually kind of brought us together, both what Mr. Prabhu said, Hindi movies and the IT revolution, two things. IT revolution taught us that, English may have been a language which was used to abuse us for 200 years. But for that, whatever it was worth, we have had a phenomenal run in the IT sector because of that, let's say, the English advantage that we had. The second part is, again, what Mr. Prabhu said, rightly agree with him 100%, that the Hindi movies have had a far more effect in spreading the language than any of the other efforts that we have made. So that comes naturally to people. And the opening up of the economy, that means in, let's say, the 91 opening of the economy, has now resulted in people, let's say, I come from Bangalore, where you've got something like 50 lakh IT engineers, 50 lakh plus, the last count was 50 lakh last year. This year, maybe it's already 17, 18 lakhs. They're from all over the country. It's purely merit driven. So IT sector is looking for talent. So it has got no language or any other barrier. So you have the whole lot of people are working in Bangalore, Chennai, Hyderabad, Pune, Mumbai. You find that in many ways it is making the place far more cosmo than it was. So yes, as a common forum, English as a language, we do have a limitation in the sense that the English reading population, people who are capable of reading literature in English, is very, very minuscule in terms of the population of the country, maybe about 2%. Now, the other side of the story is, again, India has had a phenomenal oral tradition. So generally, people are not oriented to reading as a habit. It doesn't matter which language. You do have some of the maybe Marathi, Bengali, Malayalam, Tamil, and to some extent Telugu, Kannada, and to some extent limited Hindi and Urdu. But the tradition in India has always been oral storytelling tradition, so people still prefer to watch movies, prefer to read books. So I agree with Mr. Prabhu when he says that, we do have a forum. Yes, we do have a forum, definitely yes. But we do need to have that, inculcate that habit of people reading. It doesn't matter whether it's from a mobile, from a laptop, whether it's from a Kindle, whether it's from a print book. Because that is something which we need to, that in our education system, we need to bring in. Because people still, that oral tradition, and it seems to have far, far more impact than the hard habit of reading. That's one aspect, I think, which we need to inculcate into our people, whether you read Mahabharata, whether you read the Ramayana, whatever. It cannot be only watching TV serials. People should read. So that part is something where we need to focus on. And the language, today you have a cross-section of the society which takes on to English as a subject, and English novels and what Indian authors write. There is an audience, but it's still a very small percentage. Majority of the country life is led in your language that you speak, your mother tongue. Go to any part of the country, nobody speaks English. In office space, you may use English to communicate, but you live at home, you live in Hindi, Bengali, Marathi, Punjabi, whichever the language. So therefore, there needs to be a little bit of connect between what we do and how we make people read. That's something which has been on my mind, but I also do not have the ready-made solution that what we have already existing with us.
Thank you, Mr. Shibu, on this. I'll take one last question to Mr. Praful, and then we'll go with the concluding remarks. Mr. Praful, how do you see, how can a reader catch up with the true intention of the author for taking the wisdom out of a particular book?
Well, that depends on the reader's interest. He should have some aptitude for also getting to the center of the message. And then it wouldn't be difficult. I really have not read much, so I can't really have any firm views on the subject of the question you've asked me. So really, I'm not competent to answer it, quite frankly.
Mr. Shibu, considering the timeline we have, let's keep it very precise. A very short response from you on this.
Yes, the short response should be yes, a discerning reader should be able to read without being getting what I would say led by the nose. It does require a discerning reader, and especially when you're reading books from the Western authors. And almost as a rule, they have a guideline, written or unwritten, I do not know. There is always a underlying theme which kind of pulls the reader to think in a certain line or believe in some story they are selling, which is not said so in as many words. So I guess the reader needs to be discerning and very discerning, especially when you're reading Western authors.
Mr. Praful, people are putting their focus on digital learning and e-content. Due to this reason, are we going to lose the charm of books among us? Share your views.
No, I think it is still so far what I've heard from the people who read the Kindle, even they said, look, it's really, if you have the leisure, it's much better to handle a book and read it rather than looking at a screen and seeing it. But on balance, I think what Mr. Shibu has said has been very enlightening. And he's talked about Mahabharata several times. Well, what I did was that I have not read the Mahabharata except some flashes, but nevertheless, always wanted to write. When I say always, I meant last 20 years, a book on Krishna Rajya. The only people talk about Ram Rajya, but nobody thinks of Krishna Rajya. And I moved heaven and earth to try and get somebody like my friend Mr. Iyer, who at last I bumped into, and then we wrote this book, which was published by Bloomsbury, and it has done very well in the market, although I didn't aspire to get anywhere on that one. But what I'm trying to say is that Mahabharata, yes, but get something out of it, not merely read it. And that is what I feel should be the endeavor of many a reader, particularly the more educated ones or more enlightened ones. But I think Mr. Shibu had a lot more to say on this subject, and he knows the subject, whereas I plead ignorance by comparison. Thank you very much. I think it's been an interesting session. And I must thank you, both of you, for making it possible.
Thank you, sir.
Very much.
Just conclude in
Good luck.
5 minutes. Just give us a few more minutes. We'll conclude it. Mr. Shibu, your concluding remarks, and then we'll conclude today's spotlight session.
So since Mr. Praful mentioned about Mahabharata and you should learn from it, I could agree with him more. Because recently even the Prime Minister quoted the Parliament about the challenges of Duryodhan. And he made that, that Janami Dharmam Najame Pravati, Janami Dharmam Najame Nivarti, which is what the challenges of the present day world is always. It is not that I don't know what is the right thing, but I don't feel like doing it. What do you do when people take an approach like that? I mean, that challenge continues. When I read this first time, I thought, when Krishna went to meet Duryodhana and told him, why don't you settle the Pandavas? Why get into all his fights? This is the reasoning that he had given. So that challenge of people saying that, it's not that, it's like if you talk to today's days, when you speak to somebody in the current day, he says, yaar, mujhe gyan mat de, mujhe malum hai kya karne ka. No, if that challenge, which was 6,000 years old or 7,000 years old, has not changed. So the challenge remains. So the same thing comes back to say that, yes, getting the wisdom of the book to the people is far more important than reading the book. That I could not agree with more. So why I quoted Mahabharata is because it has got so much of this wisdom, and which is again made short in Gita and given to our people so that, okay, you want to live your life, that's it. So in India, I would say we are blessed because I quote this because I don't think any other part of the world they have got any such document like what I call a Mahabharata and Bhagavad Gita. Two together is enough. If you understand this much, take the wisdom away, I think you're done for life.
Fine, Mr. Shibu. We had a very interesting insights from both of you. Great thoughts. On behalf of Team Frontless Media, I would like to put my sincere thanks to both of you for taking this time out, coming to our session of Spotlight, the last session for the calendar year 2021. It was an absolute pleasure and privilege to host both of you at this session, sir. We'll be signing off today now. This is Pranav Gupta, the co-founder and the director of Frontless Media. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much, Pranav.
Thank you, Mr. Shibu. Thank you, Mr. Praful. Good evening. Bye. Namaskar.